Welcome back, Sebastian here. So today we're going to be doing our final team preview for the 2025 F1 season. Today we're going to be taking a look at your 2024 F1 Constructors Champions, and that is, of course, McLaren. Now, starting this video off, I want to take a look at some of the key personnel involved in the McLaren team. So for McLaren, they're based in Woking in the United Kingdom. CEO Zach Brown, team principal Andrea Stella, chief designer Rob Marshall, who came over from Red Bull over the past year or so, and their engine is, of course, Mercedes. Now, moving on, taking a look at some of their results the last 5 years or so. This is a team that historically, I would say, going back to 18 months or so, this was a team that's basically been a midfield team. They've had some good seasons like 2020, 2021, where they've been able to compete for podiums on a semi-regular basis. They've also had a lot of really bad seasons, such as 2017, 2015, where they were outright backmarkers or just plain so unreliable that they retired almost every Grand Prix or every other Grand Prix. And in those in-between years, I would say other years, last decade or so, they've been, a midfield team. They've never really been a true front-running team. Of course, 18 months ago or so, midway through the 2023 season, this team brought several upgrades to the car that radically improved the car to the extent that it was basically a front-running team for the second half of 2023, and that pace pretty much continued, and it got even better coming into as the team upgraded their car this past season. And they've gotten to the point where they've gone from a midfield team 2022 competing with Alpine for fifth, fourth in the Constructors Championship to winning the Constructors Championship in 2 years, which is a pretty incredible turnaround given that it's a stable set of regulations. Now, of course, there's no guarantee that that progress will continue again further this year. Law of diminishing returns makes that very, very hard. Generally, when you're close to the top, you're at the top, it's much harder to find improvements, especially this deep in a regulation cycle. Now, when you look at some of the key results from last year, won the Constructors, like I said before, 666 points. For qualifying pace, when you look at their average pole gap, they actually weren't the fastest car over the course of the season. Their average pole gap was 2.45 tenths, which was second to Red Bull, who are basically like a tenth. Again, very, very close. That being said, race pace, my analysis generally suggested that they were actually the best team over the course of the season on race pace, with an average minimum finishing position of 2.21. Which was slightly better than Red Bull and slightly better than Ferrari. Now, before we take a look at their two drivers for the 2025 season, I want to take a look at McLaren's history and look at their best and most successful drivers. So taking a look at all of their drivers by Grand Prix starts, bit of a surprise, David Coulthard leads the list with 150 Grand Prix. Jenson Button's number 2 with 136, Hakkinen third, 131. Current driver Lando Norris sits fourth with 128. Assuming Norris competes in every race this year, starts every race, he will be number 1 by the end of the year. And given that he's still his 99 birthday, so that means he's going to turn 26 this year. Given that he'll be 26, already the most experienced McLaren driver of all time, that's a pretty heady company, I would say. Number 5, Hamilton 110, 6th Prost 107, 7th Senna 96. Of course, Prost and Senna definitely associated with this team quite a bit, but seasons were quite a bit shorter about that back then, so not a surprise to see them a bit lower on this list. Number 8, Fernando Alonso with 94, 9th Raikkonen 87, and Denny Hulme with 86 Grand Prix starts in 10th. When you look at podiums, not a big surprise. Prost and Senna lead the way there with 63 and 55 podiums respectively. Hakkinen and Coulthard tied for third with 51. Hamilton 5th with 49. Raikkonen 6th with 36. Button 7th with 26. Norris 8th with 26. Hulme 9th with 21. And Berger in 10th with 18. It'll be interesting to see how high up this list Norris can get. And I guess Piastri as well, for that matter, how high up the two of them can get by the end of the season. For Norris, if he gets, let's say, 10 podiums, that would put him in 36th out of time with Raikkonen. I think he'll probably have a bit more than that. So I think, mid-40s, I think is definitely possible. But still, I think it would be very, very hard for him to get past Hamilton, for example. Like if he got podium in 23 of 24 races, that would be enough to tie him. So highly unlikely he gets past Hamilton by the end of the season. Now, moving on, taking a look at their two drivers for this season. Lando Norris, of course, from the UK, 25 years of age. This is his 7th season Formula One, 128 starts to his name, and 1,007 Grand Prix starts. Career best in the Drivers' Championship is second, and he, of course, achieved that this past season. His teammate, Oscar Piastri from Australia, 23 years of age. This is his 3rd season Formula One. He has 46 starts, and he has 389 career points, with his career best in the Drivers' Championship being 4th. Now, I think this is going to be a really interesting and really exciting driver lineup to follow this season. Piastri, of course, kind of coming into his 3rd season F1. You still expect some improvement from your second season to 3rd season. And in the words of former Toro Rosso team principal Franz Tost, it takes 3 seasons to develop an F1 driver. So I do think we still have more to see from Piastri this year. That being said, last couple of years he's been out-qualified by Norris by a decent margin. This past season, the median qualifying gap was about a tenth and a bit or so. Despite the fact that the teammate head-to-head was 20-4, the median gap between the two of them was actually quite a bit smaller, which suggests that both of them are pretty consistent qualifiers, and it does suggest that I think Piastri does lack a little bit in outright one-lap speed compared to Norris. I looked at a whole range of F1 teammates who had basically, for a driver's 2nd and 3rd year, they were basically the same teammates. And for only 4 of the 11 that I had found from 2024 to 2000, I think, 2000, only 4 of the 11, the gap between the two drivers decreased in qualifying or went basically in the favor of that driver entering their 3rd season. So I think highly unlikely that Piastri really improves his one-lap pace to the point where he actually outright qualifies Norris over the course of the season. I could definitely see the gap decreasing to less than a tenth, but I do think it'll be more of the improvement. The improvements will be more on the race side for Piastri. For Norris, I think there's also going to be quite a bit of pressure for him. This McLaren are expected to be probably the favorites for the drivers and the constructors this year, assuming things kind of start the way that they ended last year. And as a result, I think there's going to be a fair amount of pressure on Norris as that championship favorite. He's shown the last couple of years or so that his race pace, quality pace are very, very strong. And they're basically, perhaps they're not quite as good as Max Verstappen, but I would say they're definitely elite. For racecraft, I think in terms of wheel-to-wheel combat and maybe on the strategy side as well, I do think that there is a little bit more there that he definitely, I think it's something that he can work on, but I think it's also primarily the team's responsibility. You had races like the British Grand Prix last year where I think they kind of threw away a win, where I think they were definitely the faster car that weekend on that race, but simply they weren't able to execute the race win. So I think those are going to be really important areas for Norris to focus on if he wants to win the championship this year. Of course, for Piastri, he's also going to be gunning for the championship. I think there is, a possibility that he could win the championship, but I think he's going to have to show a lot of improvement, particularly in qualifying. He's shown that I think, he has the right mindset. I think just based on how, from the outside hearing how he interacts with his race engineer as well, I think he has a pretty cold head, an old head on young shoulders. So I'm not as worried about that aspect of things as perhaps I am with Norris. But nonetheless, I think it's going to be a really interesting battle between Norris and Piastri to see who comes out on top. And I think my personal prediction, I think Norris will likely come out on top. But I'll have to kind of make an official call on that when I do my predictions in a couple weeks' time. Now, finishing this video up, taking a look at my race model and quality predictions. So these are not my personal predictions, but these are the predictions that were generated by my race model and my quality model. Given that these two drivers have been teammates for 2 years now, I think there's quite a bit of good data there. And given that Piastri, his only teammate in F1 is Norris, his placement in the model is entirely dependent on his teammate head-to-heads with Norris. For modified race score, Norris's score is 2.98, for Piastri 1.62, and again using front-running model, so I expect estimating that the team will score 550 points in the constructors. It expects Norris to get 57% of the team's points and Piastri to get 43, with a points difference of 89 points in Norris's favor and an average finishing position difference of 1.42. in Norris's favor. From qualifying, pretty similar to what we saw last year. The quality model is predicting that the median qualifying delta between the two drivers will be 1.12 tenths of a second in Norris's favor. So that's really it for my preview for McLaren's 2025 F1 season. Should be a really exciting year. Really excited to see how they do and see if they can either one or both drivers are able to challenge for the drivers' championship, and to see as well if McLaren can defend their constructors title. I think it will definitely be a very, very competitive season between them, Ferrari, and perhaps even a Red Bull or a Mercedes as well. So there you go. Thank you so much for watching. That's my preview for McLaren. I guess at this point, all 10 teams are now finished. And yeah, winter testing will be right around the corner as well, as of when this video will go live. So anyway, thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.